Conversations continue on. Now, State Senator Drew McEwen on the line. Good morning, Drew. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Jeff. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Saw you in front of the microphones there talking about Senate Bill 5770. This is a property tax measure. Tell us a little bit more about what this is.
Yeah, so this is, in my opinion, a very egregious bill. It would allow local units of government, whether it's your county or city, to exceed the 1% property tax cap that was placed on by voters and then reaffirmed by the legislature a decade or so ago, that limits property tax increases to 1%. And this would bump it up to 3%, so it triples what can happen at the local level. But then here's the other part of this, is that it allows a local unit of government to bank that. So let's say in a given year they don't want to use it, so they can roll it over to the following year, and then that next year, instead of doing a 3%, they could do a 4, 5, or 6%. The rough math on this, initial indications are this has the effect of potentially costing taxpayers another $6 billion in property taxes, and at a time when housing continues to be unaffordable for a vast majority of people that don't presently own a home. And, we just continue to see costs going up and savings being eroded. This is the wrong step. And actually, when you look at the revenue growth of local government, it exceeds what the revenue growth has been for working families. And so once again, it's this trend of continuing to be government needing and wanting more and more and more, instead of just reassessing where they're at. And making a budget, whether it's at the city level, the county level, or the state level, it should be tough. It should be hard to do. As a steward of the tax and a fiduciary of the taxpayers' dollars, we've got to make sure that we're doing the very best job. And asking taxpayers to have their property taxes potentially tripled with the local levy rate is the wrong direction.
So on this, then, would those funds, well, I guess first things first is if there is previous law and initiatives by the voters kind of going against this, how does this get through first?
Yeah, well, so first of all, the original initiative that was passed, and I forget the number, I believe it was in the late 90s, was a 1% property tax cap. That was passed by initiative and then overturned by the state Supreme Court a few years later. And under Governor Gregoire, she then called a special session, and the legislature overwhelmingly voted, and the governor signed into law, Governor Gregoire signed into law a 1% property tax cap. So one, it was passed by the voters. The state Supreme Court didn't like the way it was worded. And then the legislature made the corrections in a special session. Again, this happened in the early 2000s.
Sure.
And in doing that, enshrined the will of the voters. And so here we are now in 2024, and they want to bump what that cap is. And again, the other part of this too is that it allows your local unit of government to do this, what they call councilmatic. They do not have to put it to a vote of the people. So to me, it's the worst of the worst. It's tripling what that cap rate is, and you don't have to ask the voters for approval.
That 2001 initiative was 747, if anybody wants to go back and read that.
That sounds correct.
Yeah. So would any of this potential money be earmarked or used for some of the mandates that are brought on by the legislature? I talk with folks often at the city, county level, and they talk about those unfunded mandates from ledge. Would this work on that, or is this a different, would this go to something totally different?
Well, again, so this would be money that's being raised in at the local level, allowing them to raise taxes more and have more revenue, and they could certainly utilize it in the capacity that they saw fit, if they chose to go down this path. And I agree, the unfunded mandates that Olympia continues to put on local units of government is out of control, and that's part of the overall issue. Is that let's go back and fix some of these things that have been done, and we keep continuing to ask the working families in this state to give more and more out of their pocket but yet don't make any corrections on our side of the ledger, and that has to change.
I noticed that there was, and I don't know if it went anywhere, but there was some ideas from another one of your Senate colleagues about, well, maybe let's not do this, but what about giving municipalities, it was something about the state tax rate, like that would go down in
Yeah, it's kind of like a revenue sharing
yeah.
scheme, for lack of a better word, and yeah, it would allow funds collected at the state level then to be I don't know if diverted would be the right word, but maybe reassigned to local units of government. Again, I mean, I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but we're kind of putting a Band-Aid on the overall problem. The problem is there's a spending problem, and we got too many unfunded mandates on local government.
And
I would argue that instead of raising more money, we should be talking about providing relief to the taxpayers.
And there is still record surplus from even just the last few years sitting in the coffers.
Yeah, I mean the state revenue growth has been tremendous. That's without question. And I've come to learn a little bit more about what's driving this particular bill, 5770, for the property tax increase, is that it's King County, and during COVID, like a lot of units of government, they qualified and accepted a lot of COVID relief money, and they utilized that at the time for operating expenses. And now that's come home to roost because those funds are gone, and they're afraid to make operating cuts. It's kind of a King County issue, but it's going to end up affecting the other 38 counties in the state.
One thing that looks likely may not come to your committee specifically, but coming out of the House was a bill looking at, I guess, redeveloping or expanding into small nuclear energy. Do you see that this could be a benefit in some of the areas around the 35th, or is this kind of an Eastern Washington thing?
It's both. It's got the potential to do both. I'm not as familiar with this particular House bill. I've got a similar bill that's cleared the Senate committee, and we're trying to get it pulled to a floor vote on the Senate here before our cutoffs next week. That would allow for the development of small modular nuclear reactors. They're much more easier to site and help provide that baseline power. It's a carbon-free power source. It's an area where the governor himself has indicated he's open to pursuing this path. And neither one of these bills, to be clear, is magically building a reactor tomorrow. But what it's doing is it's advancing the possibility for looking at how would we site these, how would we do this. It's the first step in what would be a 10,000-step process.
Oh yeah,
but it's an important one.
I've seen in other European countries, they're starting to look into this. And obviously the most recent tragedy was Fukushima. That was over, 10, 15 years ago now, I think. And the circumstances in that aspect were quite unique. And it seems to me like as you're looking at all the energy options available, that's one that's on the table. And could have, I mean, the technology seems to be such that it's gotten safer over the years.
Oh, significantly, yeah. And I mean, there were some design flaws in the disaster in Japan that are just not utilized today, right? So a lot has changed. As you know, this is a field I was in the Navy.
Weren't you in a nuke sub?
Yeah, I was in the nuclear engineering field while I was in the Navy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we'll see.
It's and what you find with this too, is that when people don't understand something, it evokes a fear, and nuclear does it have the potential to be bad? Yes, and we can utilize it in weapon systems. There's been issues that have happened in other plants, but the power of it is so significant that in a safe design with a well-trained crew, it is a safe, operating, reliable form of energy. And again, we've come so far with our technologies that to not even be looking at it is the wrong approach. We have to consider all forms of energy. And when people say, "Oh, we just need clean, safe things like solar panels," well, let's remember E equals MC squared, and that equation is power, and that there is no pure form of energy. It's just power in and of itself is destructive. And you want to talk about a solar panel, there's 19 toxic chemicals that do not have a half-life, that are a byproduct that go into the production of it. And I just bring that up from the standpoint, there's not this magical, clear, pure form of energy out there. There just isn't. Everything has a negative side to it. So we need to develop these, though, in a responsible manner. And you can't just disregard one because maybe not having a full understanding of it. We have to be looking at all sources.
Yeah, I guess you go back, and even the water wheel has its could have its
Yeah.
challenges, if you're looking at it from strictly a pro and con perspective. Very interesting. And the more I talk with you guys, the more I understand that you have got to really have your finger on a lot of different pulses, knowing what's going on out there. Senator Drew McEwen from the 35th here, drewmcewen.src.wastateleg.org. It's a mouthful. I'll just put the links in the show notes here. But Drew, I'll let you get back to it, and you have a good rest of the day, good weekend, okay?
Sounds good. You too. Thanks for the time, Jeff.
Thank you.